Type 1. Cookie jarring. Picture this. You've been talking to someone for a few weeks. They text you every morning. They flirt. They make plans for the weekend. It feels like things are slowly becoming something. Then one evening, you're scrolling through Instagram. You notice they're leaving the exact same flirty comments on someone else's posts. Later, you find out they've also been going on dates with another person, maybe even a third. When you ask about it, they smile and say, "We're not exclusive." Technically, they're right. But somehow it still feels like you've been quietly replaced before you were ever chosen. Welcome to the world of cookie jarring. Cookie jarring is when someone keeps multiple romantic options around at the same time, treating one person as the favorite while keeping others as backups, just in case things don't work out. To everyone else, it sounds practical. Isn't that just dating? Sometimes it is. But inside, the difference is intention. Dating is about getting to know people. Cookie jarring is about never letting yourself run out of options. Psychologists call this loss aversion. Many people fear losing what they have more than they value committing to one choice. So instead of risking being alone, they keep emotional insurance policies waiting in the background. For the people on the receiving end, it can feel confusing. You're given just enough attention to believe you're important, until you realize you were never the only person at the table. Because here's the truth. Everyone deserves to be chosen because they're enough, not because they happen to be the last cookie left in the jar. Type 2. Paper clipping. Picture this. It's been months. You've accepted that they're gone. The conversation's ended. The photos are buried in your camera roll. You've stopped checking their profile. Life finally feels normal again. Then one afternoon, your phone buzzes. "Hey, how have you been?" No explanation, no apology, no mention of why they disappeared in the first place. Just a casual message, as if no time has passed at all. You reply. The conversation feels familiar, maybe even comforting. For a moment, you wonder, could this actually work this time? Then, just as suddenly as they returned, they disappear again. Welcome to the world of paper clipping. Paper clipping is when someone from your romantic past unexpectedly pops back into your life. Not necessarily to rebuild the relationship, but simply to remind you they still exist. To everyone else, it seems harmless. They were just saying hi. Inside, though, it rarely feels that simple. Old feelings have a funny way of waking up the moment we think we've buried them. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect. Our minds naturally remember unfinished relationships better than finished ones. When someone reappears without offering closure, our brains instinctively start reopening a chapter we thought had already ended. That's why a simple "hey" can carry so much emotional weight. Not because of the message itself, but because of everything it quietly brings back with it. Because sometimes the hardest people to move on from aren't the ones who leave. They're the ones who keep coming back, without ever planning to stay. Type 3. Floodlighting. Picture this. You've only known each other for 3 days, but somehow you already know about their childhood trauma, their biggest insecurity, their worst breakup, the family member they no longer speak to, the fear that keeps them awake at night. The conversation feels incredibly deep. You think, wow, I've never connected with someone this quickly. Within a week, it feels like you've known each other for years. But then, the intensity becomes overwhelming. The conversations start feeling heavy. You realize you've learned everything about them, without ever really getting to know them. Welcome to the world of floodlighting. Floodlighting is when someone shares deeply personal or emotionally intense information very early in a relationship, creating a sense of instant closeness before genuine trust has had time to develop. To everyone else, it can look like honesty. They're just being vulnerable. Inside, though, vulnerability and emotional dumping aren't always the same thing. Psychologists call this false intimacy. Our brains naturally associate personal disclosure with trust. So when someone shares their deepest experiences too soon, it can create the feeling of a strong emotional bond, even though the relationship itself is still brand new. Sometimes it's intentional. Sometimes it's simply someone craving connection so badly that they skip all the small steps in between. Because real intimacy isn't built by revealing everything all at once. It's built by allowing trust to grow at the same pace as the relationship. After all, the strongest bridges aren't the ones built overnight. They're the ones that become stronger, one conversation at a time. Type 4. Roaching. Picture this. You've been seeing someone for a while, the dates are great. The chemistry is obvious. You assume you're both on the same page. After all, why wouldn't you be? Then one evening, you're out with friends. Someone casually says, "Wait, aren't they dating Sarah too?" You laugh. "What?" "No." Then another friend chimes in. "I thought they were seeing Alex." Suddenly, little things start making sense. Why they were always busy on certain weekends, why they never made long-term plans, why every date seemed to happen at the last minute. You weren't the only person they were dating. You were simply the only one who didn't know it. Welcome to the world of roaching. Roaching is when you discover the person you're dating has been secretly seeing multiple other people at the same time. The name comes from the idea that if you spot one cockroach, there are usually many more hiding out of sight. To everyone else, the solution seems obvious. You weren't exclusive. Maybe. But inside, the hurt usually isn't about exclusivity. It's about honesty. Psychologists call this the false consensus effect. We naturally assume other people see a relationship the same way we do, unless they tell us otherwise. So while one person believes they're building something meaningful, the other may simply see another name on their dating roster. That's what makes roaching so unsettling. It doesn't just change how you see the relationship, it changes how you remember it. Because trust isn't broken the moment you discover the truth. Sometimes, it's broken the moment you realize you were the only one living in it. Type 5. Kitten fishing. Picture this. You match with someone online. Their photos look incredible. Every picture seems effortlessly perfect. The conversations are fun. You finally decide to meet. They're already waiting when you arrive. For a second, you wonder if you're in the wrong place. Because they do look like their photos, just not exactly. Maybe they're using pictures from 5 years ago. Maybe every photo is taken from the exact same angle. Maybe they've edited them just enough to look like a slightly different person. Nothing is technically fake, but something definitely feels different. Welcome to the world of kitten fishing. Kitten fishing is when someone subtly misrepresents themselves online. Not with completely fake photos or identities, but with small exaggerations that make them seem a little more attractive, successful, or interesting than they really are. To everyone else, it sounds harmless. It's just a filter. Everyone picks their best photos. Inside, though, even tiny deceptions can quietly change the way trust begins. Psychologists call this impression management. We all try to present the best version of ourselves, especially when meeting someone new. But there's a difference between highlighting your strengths and editing away your reality. The problem with kitten fishing isn't that someone looks a little different in person. It's that first impressions are built on authenticity. Because the goal of dating isn't to convince someone to like a carefully polished version of you. It's to find someone who would still choose you after the filters are gone. Type 6. Monkey branching. Picture this. You've been together for over a year. Everything feels normal. You trust them. Then one day they start acting differently. They're suddenly protective of their phone. They've made a new friend from work you've never heard about before. They seem emotionally distant, but strangely optimistic. A few weeks later, they end the relationship. You're devastated. Then, almost immediately, they're officially dating someone else. Not weeks later, not months later. Days later. You can't help but wonder, when did this relationship actually begin? Welcome to the world of monkey branching. Monkey branching is when someone starts building a connection with a new romantic partner before letting go of their current one, making sure they have another relationship to hold on to before ending the first. To everyone else, it can seem cold. Why didn't they just break up first? Inside, though, it often comes from fear rather than confidence. Psychologists call this attachment insecurity. Some people struggle with the uncertainty of being alone. Instead of ending one relationship and facing that empty space, they search for another connection before they let go of the first. That doesn't make it any less painful, because while one person is grieving the relationship, the other has already started moving on. Here's the part that's hardest to accept. Relationships don't always end the day someone walks away. Sometimes, they end the moment someone quietly starts looking for the next branch to hold on to. And by then, the goodbye has already begun. Type 7. Throning. Picture this. You meet someone who's surprisingly interested in you. The conversations move fast. They're eager to make things official. Almost immediately, they want photos together. They introduce you to their friends. They post you all over social media. At first, it feels flattering. Then you notice a pattern. Whenever they're with you, they seem more interested in who's watching than in what you're saying. They love mentioning your job, your achievements, your followers, your family, anything that makes you seem impressive. But when it's just the two of you, the effort feels different. The conversations are shorter. The attention fades. It slowly begins to feel like they aren't dating you. They're dating what being with you says about them. Welcome to the world of throning. Throning is when someone dates another person, mainly because they believe that person's status, popularity, success, or influence makes them look better by association. To everyone else, it can look like ambition. They're dating someone impressive. Inside, though, it often feels like you're being admired, but not truly seen. Psychologists call this basking in reflected glory. We naturally enjoy being associated with successful or admired people because it can boost our own sense of status and identity. But relationships aren't trophies, they're partnerships. The strongest relationships are built on curiosity, not convenience, on admiration for the person, not admiration for what being with them says about you. Because eventually, the spotlight fades, and when it does, the only thing left is whether someone loved you or simply loved standing next to your throne. Type 8, micro-cheating. Picture this. You're in a relationship. Nothing dramatic has happened. There hasn't been a big fight. No one has cheated, at least not in the way most people think. But lately, something feels different. They're constantly reacting to one person's stories. They have a Snapchat streak with someone they've never mentioned. They keep texting a coworker late at night. When you ask about it, they laugh. We're just friends. And maybe they're telling the truth, but somehow, the emotional distance between the two of you keeps growing, while someone else seems to be getting closer. Welcome to the world of micro-cheating. Micro-cheating describes small behaviors that don't clearly cross the line into infidelity, but can quietly erode trust within a relationship. On their own, each action may seem harmless. Together, they can create the feeling that emotional energy is being invested somewhere else. To everyone else, it seems impossible to define. It's not cheating. Nothing actually happened. Inside, though, relationships aren't built on technicalities. They're built on trust. Psychologists often describe trust as something that grows through countless small moments of reassurance. And just as it's built in small moments, it can also be weakened by them. That's why micro-cheating isn't really about one message, or one like, or one conversation. It's about whether your partner's attention is slowly moving somewhere your relationship can't follow, because every couple draws the line in a different place. The important part isn't where that line is. It's making sure both people know where it has been drawn. Type 9. The beige flag. Picture this. You've been dating for a few months. They're kind, thoughtful, funny. Honestly, you can't find a single red flag. But then, you notice something. Every time they walk past a dog, they wave. Not at the owner, at the dog. Another day, you catch them apologizing after accidentally bumping into a mannequin. They organize Skittles by color before eating them. They read the entire restaurant menu 3 days before the reservation, and every single time you watch a movie together, they whisper, "I think the good guy wins." You've stopped asking why. Welcome to the world of the beige flag. A beige flag is a harmless little quirk that's neither a red flag nor a green flag. It's simply something so oddly specific that it makes you pause and think, huh. To everyone else, it sounds ridiculous. That's not a dating flag. Exactly, that's the point. Psychologists often describe these as idiosyncrasies, the tiny habits that make each of us uniquely ourselves. They're usually meaningless on their own, but over time they become the little details that make someone unforgettable. Because real relationships aren't built entirely on grand romantic gestures. They're also built on laughing because your partner salutes every pigeon they see, or insists on smelling a book before reading it. Sometimes, the strangest things about a person become the reasons you smile years later. And maybe that's why they're called beige flags. They're not exciting enough to change your relationship. They're just weird enough to make it yours. Type 10. Cloaking. Picture this. You go on a great first date. They laugh at your jokes. They ask about your family. They even text you afterwards. I had a really good time. A second date is planned. Then you wake up the next morning. Their profile is gone. The chat has disappeared. Instagram? Gone. TikTok? Gone. Even the dating app says this user no longer exists. At first you think it's a glitch. Maybe they deleted the app. Maybe their phone broke. Then your friend says, "No, I can still see their profile." That's when it hits you. They didn't disappear. They disappeared from you. Welcome to the world of cloaking. Cloaking is when someone doesn't just ghost you, they block you across every platform without warning, making it almost impossible to contact them or even know what happened. To everyone else, it can seem extreme. If they wanted to leave, why not just say goodbye? Inside, though, silence leaves the imagination to do all the talking. Psychologists call this the need for closure. Our brains naturally search for explanations when something ends unexpectedly. Without an answer, we often invent our own, usually one that's far harsher than the truth. That's why cloaking can feel so unsettling. It's not just the loss of the relationship, it's the sudden erasure of it, as if someone pressed a button and deleted every doorway back to the conversation. Because endings are painful, but at least they give us somewhere to begin healing. Being left with nothing at all can feel like trying to close a book whose final chapter was torn out. If you liked the video, watch these as well, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next.